The mug sat on the counter, where I'd left it the night before, cream-coloured ceramic with a thin gold rim, the one I'd bought myself after my first paycheck. Small victory, small joy. I'd wrapped my hands around it every morning for 3 years, feeling the warmth seep through, grounding myself before facing another day in this house where I was always second. Emma reached for it without asking. Her fingers closed around the handle, and something inside me went still. Not angry, not surprised, just tired. The kind of tired that lives in your bones, that accumulates over years of small concessions until you can't remember what it felt like to expect consideration. "That's mine," I said, my voice flat. She glanced over her shoulder, already pouring coffee into it. The dark liquid filled the ceramic, steam rising in lazy spirals. "You're not using it?" "I was about to." "Well, I got here first." She smiled. Not cruel, just careless. The way she smiled at everything I owned, everything I wanted, as if my claim to anything was conditional, temporary, subject to her need. As if first-person ownership was a concept that didn't quite apply to me the way it did to her. I stood there in my pajamas, watching her add cream to my coffee in my mug, and felt the familiar weight settle over my chest. The weight of being overlooked, of asking for scraps of consideration in my own home. The weight of knowing that if I said anything more, I'd be the difficult one, the sister, who couldn't share, who made problems out of nothing. Mum walked in, her reading glasses perched on her head, phone already in hand. She moved through the kitchen like it was a space that existed for her convenience, barely registering my presence by the doorway. "Linda, can you run to the store? We're out of milk." "Emma just used the last of the cream," I said. "Then get both." She didn't look up from her phone. Her tone wasn't harsh, wasn't angry. It was worse than that. It was automatic. The way you'd speak to someone whose compliance you'd never had to question. Emma leaned against the counter, sipping from my mug, scrolling through her phone with her free hand. The morning light caught the earrings she was wearing, small gold hoops that glinted when she moved her head. I recognised them immediately, the ones I'd gotten for Christmas 2 years ago, still in their box on Christmas morning, my name on the tag. The ones Mum had asked to borrow from my drawer a week later. Then wrapped for Emma's birthday with a card that said, "Love, Mum and Dad." She probably didn't even remember they'd been mine first. Why would she? In this house, the path of things flowed in one direction, toward Emma, around Emma, for Emma. I was the reservoir they drew from, expecting it to refill itself without effort or acknowledgement. I went to the store. I bought the milk and cream. The morning air was cold, and I hadn't grabbed a jacket, but the discomfort felt distant, like it was happening to someone else. I drove with the windows down, letting the chill seep into my skin, wondering why I couldn't feel angry about any of it anymore. Anger required energy, required the belief that things could be different. I came back to an empty kitchen and my mug in the sink, coffee ring staining the ceramic because Emma never rinsed anything. Brown residue clung to the inside, already drying, already harder to clean than it would have been if she'd taken 30 seconds to rinse it out. But 30 seconds of consideration was apparently too much to ask. This was my life. A series of small erasures, each one too minor to justify anger, too constant to ignore. Death by 1,000 paper cuts, except paper cuts eventually heal. These just accumulated. That night, I lay in bed and thought about the mug. Just the mug. Not the earrings or the birthday dinner Mum cancelled because Emma had a date, or the college fund they'd spent on her graduate programme while I worked full-time to pay for my own education. Not the boyfriend I'd brought home who'd ended up dating Emma instead. Or the promotion at work I'd gotten that Mum had mentioned once while talking about Emma's smaller achievement for 20 minutes. Just the mug, because it was small enough to hold in my mind without breaking. I'd bought it because it was beautiful and mine, because I'd earned it with my own money, chosen it with my own hands, brought it home to a house where nothing felt like it truly belonged to me. Because for one moment in a discount home store, standing in an aisle of kitchen supplies, I'd felt like someone who deserved nice things, someone whose preferences mattered, and she'd taken it without thinking, because in this family, what was mine had never really belonged to me. Not in any way that mattered. Not in any way that stopped them from using it, borrowing it, taking it, giving it away. I turned onto my side, pulling the blanket up to my chin. The fabric was thin, worn from too many washings. I'd been meaning to buy a new one for months, but every time I had a little extra money, something came up. Someone needed something. Emma's car payment when she was short, Mum's book club gift when she'd forgotten to buy something. Small amounts, always small, always reasonable to ask for. The room was dark, quiet. Outside, a car passed, its headlight sweeping across my ceiling in a slow arc that reminded me of searchlights. Looking for something, finding nothing. I closed my eyes. My breath moved in and out of my lungs, steady and mechanical. I tried to remember the last time I'd felt like myself, like Linda, whole and separate and real. The memory wouldn't come. Maybe there had never been a time. Maybe I'd been born into this role. The spare daughter, the helpful sister, the one who existed to smooth things over and fill in gaps. I closed my eyes tighter, willing sleep to come. The next morning, I didn't get up. Not because I was tired, though I was. Not because I was sick, though my chest felt heavy and strange, like someone had placed a weight on my sternum while I slept. I stayed in bed because getting up meant going downstairs, meant seeing Emma at the kitchen table with my mug, meant Mum asking me to do something for someone else, meant another day of being invisible in my own life. So, I didn't move. Hours passed. The light changed from grey to white to gold, shifting across the wall like time made visible. I heard them leave for work, for errands, for whatever mattered more than checking on me. Footsteps on the stairs. Emma's quick and light, Mum's slower. Voices in the hallway muffled through my closed door. Neither of them knocked. Neither of them wondered why I wasn't up, wasn't moving, wasn't doing the things I always did. My phone buzzed twice. Work, probably, wondering where I was. I didn't reach for it. My arm felt too heavy, like it was made of something denser than flesh and bone. Like I'd already started turning into stone, into absence, into the empty space I'd always really been. I thought about the mug again, and then about everything else. The slow accumulation of little losses. The way I'd shrunk myself to fit into the spaces they left me, making myself smaller and quieter and less demanding until I'd almost disappeared completely. The way I'd apologised for wanting anything at all. Time, attention, basic consideration. As if wanting were itself a transgression. My breathing slowed. The heaviness in my chest spread outward, into my arms, my legs, until my whole body felt like it was sinking into the mattress. The sheets beneath me, the pillow under my head, the walls around me, all of it felt like it was closing in, wrapping around me like a cocoon. Not painful, just final, like coming to the end of something that had been ending for a very long time. I closed my eyes again. The darkness behind my eyelids was soft, complete. I let myself sink into it, let it fill my lungs and pool behind my ribs. I thought about how quiet it was. How peaceful, how no one was asking me for anything in this moment, how I didn't have to be anything for anyone. This time, I didn't wake up. Except I did. The light was different, earlier, sharper, with that particular quality of morning sun that hasn't been filtered through hours of atmosphere yet. The alarm clock showed 6:47 a.m, the same time I used to set it before I stopped caring about getting up early. The same time I'd wake up, make coffee in my mug, and try to start the day with something that felt like my own. I sat up slowly, my heart beating steady and calm. My body felt light, strange, like I'd shed something heavy I hadn't known I was carrying. The room looked the same. Same furniture, same pale blue walls that had always felt too cold. Same pile of laundry I'd been meaning to fold. But something had shifted inside me, like a door had opened in a house I'd thought had no exits. I knew exactly where I was, when I was. The knowledge was immediate, absolute, undeniable. 3 years ago, almost to the day, back before the final erosion of myself, before I'd given up completely. Back when I still had choices I hadn't yet made, paths I hadn't yet closed off. The knowledge sat in my chest like a stone, solid, unmovable, certain. I had lived this day before. I had lived 3 more years in this house, shrinking and fading until there was nothing left of me but service and silence. And then I'd stopped. I'd lain down in this bed and let the weight of being nothing finally crush what little remained. And now I was here again, with all the memories of what came after and the chance to choose differently. I looked at the clock again, 6:48 a.m. Time moving forward, second by second, carrying me toward the moment when Emma would reach for a mug I hadn't bought yet, toward the moment when I'd stand in the kitchen and feel something inside me break too quietly for anyone to hear. This was the day I'd gone to that home store. The day I'd bought the mug. The day I'd tried to carve out one small thing in my life that felt like mine. I stood up, my legs steady beneath me. The grief was still there, I could feel it. A quiet ache that would probably never fully leave. The memory of dying slowly, of fading until there was nothing left but absence. But underneath it was something else. Something like clarity, like the calm that comes after you've already lost everything and realised you're still here, still breathing, still capable of choosing what comes next. I got dressed. Jeans, a sweater, my good boots, the ones I saved for occasions that mattered. I opened my laptop and searched for apartments in my price range. I'd done this before, years from now, when it was almost too late. When I'd saved just enough to escape but had nothing left inside me to take with me. When leaving felt less like freedom and more like exile. Like being pushed out of a place that had never really wanted me anyway. Not this time. This time I was choosing to leave while I still existed enough to build something on the other side. By noon, I'd contacted 3 landlords. The messages were brief, professional, inquiring about availability and asking to schedule viewings. My fingers moved across the keyboard with a certainty I didn't remember having before, like I was following instructions I'd written for myself in another lifetime. By evening, I'd scheduled viewings for the next day. I moved through the house like water, present but untouchable. I could feel them noticing the change, the way I held myself differently, the way I didn't automatically move toward tasks that needed doing. Mum asked me to help Emma with something. Moving furniture, I think, rearranging her room for the 3rd time that month. And I said, I can't. I have appointments tomorrow. Cancel them, Mum said absently, her eyes still on her phone. No. The word landed in the room like something solid. Mum looked up. Then, surprised, Emma too pausing in the doorway with a confused expression. I'd said no before, but never like this. Never flat and final, with no apology attached, no explanation offered to soften the refusal. It's important, Emma said. I need help with, I'm sure you'll figure it out. I kept my voice even, almost kind. No anger, no resentment, just a simple statement of fact. You will figure it out because you'll have to, because I won't be there to do it for you. I walked upstairs before either of them could respond, my heart beating steady and calm. Behind me, I heard their voices, confused murmuring, the tone of people trying to understand what had just shifted. But I didn't turn around. I didn't explain. The old Linda would have gone back, apologised, offered to help anyway. The old Linda had died in this house, in this bed, under the weight of being nothing. This Linda kept walking. The apartment was small, a studio in an older building with hardwood floors and a window that faced east. The morning light would come in golden and direct, I realised, standing in the empty space. Enough space for one person who didn't need much. Enough distance from the house where I'd spent years disappearing, where the walls themselves seemed to have absorbed my slow erasure. The landlord walked me through it, pointing out features: updated kitchen, good water pressure, quiet neighbours. I barely heard him. I was too busy feeling the space, imagining my things in it, my life in it, mine, completely, undeniably mine. "I'll take it," I told him. He looked surprised. "Don't you want to think about it? See a few other places? Most people?" "No. I'll sign today if you have the lease ready." He studied my face, perhaps seeing something there that convinced him I meant it. "Okay, let me get the paperwork." While he went to his car, I stood in the empty apartment and let myself feel it. The freedom of it. The terrifying, exhilarating reality that I was choosing this. That I was stepping out of a life that had never fit and into a space where I could finally expand into my actual size. I moved out over the next 2 weeks, quietly, methodically while they were at work. I packed my clothes, fewer than I'd thought, most of them practical and plain, chosen not to stand out. I packed my books, my laptop, the few pieces of jewellery that were actually mine. It was shocking how little there was, how small my actual possessions were compared to the space I'd taken up. I went to the home store, the same one from before, and bought dishes. An entire set: plates, bowls, mugs, 4 of each, cream-coloured ceramic with thin gold rims. I ran my fingers over them in the store, feeling the smooth glaze, the delicate rim. They were beautiful. They were mine. I was buying them not as a consolation prize, not as a small comfort in a life I couldn't change, but as the foundation of something I was building deliberately. The cashier rang them up, wrapped them carefully. "These are lovely," she said. "Special occasion?" "New apartment," I said. "How exciting. First place on your own?" "Yes?" The word felt true in a way that went beyond the literal facts. First place that was truly my own, where my things would stay my things, where my space would be respected because I would be the one setting the boundaries. When I was done, my room was empty except for the furniture that had come with it. The dresser they'd bought when I was 12, the bed frame that had been Emma's first and became mine when she upgraded. Even the curtains had been hand-me-downs. I stood in the doorway and looked at the space that had been mine for so many years and felt nothing. No nostalgia, no sadness. Just relief that I was leaving it behind. I left a note on the kitchen counter, brief and polite. "Moved out, new address below if you need it." I didn't take the old mug because it didn't exist yet. That version of me, the one who'd bought it as a small consolation prize for a life she couldn't change, was gone. That version had died quietly, alone, in a room where no one checked on her. This version bought a whole set because she was building something new, something whole, something that couldn't be eroded by 1,000 small takings. Mum called 3 days later. I was unpacking books, arranging them on the small shelf I'd bought, when my phone rang. I looked at her name on the screen and felt my chest tighten, then deliberately loosened it. This was different now. I was different now. "You left," she said when I answered. "Yes." Without discussing it, without even telling us properly. I left a note. "Linda." Her voice carried that particular tone, disappointment mixed with confusion, as if I'd broken some rule I was supposed to understand. As if leaving required permission, required negotiation, required their approval. "Why would you do this? What's this about?" I sat in my new apartment, morning light streaming through the east window, just as I'd imagined, my hands wrapped around one of my new mugs. The coffee was hot, the ceramic smooth and perfect against my palms. I needed my own space, I said simply. You had space here, your whole room. It's done, Mom. I'm settled. I'm fine. Silence. I could hear her breathing on the other end, trying to formulate a response that would make this make sense in the framework where she understood our family, where I was the helpful one, the flexible one, the one who didn't make waves. Then, Emma's upset. She says you've been cold to her. Of course, Emma was upset. Not because she missed me. We'd barely talked even when we lived in the same house, but because I'd removed myself from the equation. Because suddenly there was no one to pick up her slack, to lend her things without expecting them back, to be the backup plan when she needed one. I was a function she'd relied on without ever seeing me as a person, and now that function was unavailable. I haven't been cold, I said. I've been busy. Well, Mom's tone turned stiff, defensive. I suppose you've made your decision. I have. After she hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment and felt nothing but relief. The conversation had been uncomfortable, but it had also been finite. It had ended. She'd hung up and I was still here, still whole, still fine. The world hadn't ended because I disappointed her. The sky hadn't fallen because I put myself first. I sipped my coffee slowly, tasting every bit of it. It was exactly the temperature I liked, made exactly the way I preferred. No one had taken it before I could drink it. No one would leave the mug in the sink with a stain I'd have to clean. This was mine. All of it. The coffee, the mug, the morning, the life. 3 months passed like water finding its level. I settled into rhythms that belonged only to me. Morning coffee at my small kitchen table, watching the light change from gold to white. Evening walks through my neighbourhood, learning the streets, nodding hello to the same people at the same times. Weekends spent reading or exploring the city, going to museums, sitting in cafes with a book and no one asking me when I'd be done. No one borrowed my things. No one dismissed my plans. No one treated my space like it was communal property available for their convenience. The silence was profound, almost startling at first. I kept expecting interruption, kept bracing for someone to need something, to ask for something, to take something. But I was alone. And slowly, the aloneness started to feel less like isolation and more like peace. At first, they didn't understand. Mum called occasionally, her voice tight with confusion and unspoken accusation. Why had I left? What had they done? Was I punishing them? Emma sent texts, casual at first, asking to meet for coffee or help with some task. Then, shorter, more pointed, when I politely declined. Are you mad at me? One text read. No, I replied. Just busy. Too busy for your own sister? I stared at that message for a long time, feeling the familiar pull of guilt, the old reflex to apologize and accommodate. But I died once from that reflex, from letting it override everything I needed until there was nothing left. Yes, I typed back. Sometimes. I wasn't angry with them. That was what they couldn't seem to grasp. I didn't hate them or want revenge. Hate would have required caring in a way I didn't anymore, or at least, not in the way I used to. I simply didn't want to return to a life where I taught them that my boundaries were negotiable, where my needs were always secondary, where I existed to make their lives smoother. Then, the calls stopped. The texts grew infrequent, then rare. They moved on because people do, especially when you're not there to serve as their supporting character, their safety net, their convenient solution. I moved on too, but differently. I moved towards something instead of away from nothing. I got better at my job, took on projects I'd always avoided because I'd been too tired from taking care of everyone else. I made friends, real ones, who knew me as Linda, whole and complete, not as someone's sister or daughter first. I learned what I liked, what I wanted, what I wouldn't compromise on. I learned how to be myself without apologizing for it. The first time I saw them after the sap was at a family gathering 8 months later. A cousin's wedding I couldn't avoid without causing more drama than it was worth. I wore a dress I'd bought myself, a deep blue that made me feel elegant and capable. I arrived exactly on time and planned to leave exactly when appropriate. In and out, clean boundaries, no lingering. Emma found me near the dessert table. She looked good. She always looked good. Hairstyled in perfect waves, makeup flawless, wearing something expensive that Mum had probably helped pay for. But there was something different about her expression, something tight around her eyes that I didn't remember seeing before. Linda. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Long time. It has been. You look different. I knew what she meant. I stood differently now, held myself like someone who took up space on purpose, like someone who belonged to herself. Thank you. She shifted her weight, glancing around as if checking for witnesses. The gesture was familiar. Emma always performed for an audience, even when she didn't realise she was doing it. I've been meaning to call you. You have my number. I know, She paused. Things have been busy, and I thought maybe you needed space? I do. Her smile tightened. Mom says you're doing well. New apartment, new routine, very independent. Yes. Must be nice. There was an edge to her voice now, something sharp underneath the pleasant tone. Not quite anger, not quite jealousy. Something closer to resentment mixed with confusion. Having everything exactly how you want it. No one to bother you. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't noticed before, something my old self would have been too busy accommodating to recognise. She was uncomfortable, not because I'd changed, but because my change had shifted something in her world that she didn't know how to shift back. My absence had created a hole, and she'd fallen into it without realising the hole had always been there, shaped like me, held open by my constant giving. It is nice, I said quietly. I recommend it. She laughed, but it sounded forced, brittle. Well, I couldn't do that. Leave like that. Mum would be devastated. Would she? The question hung between us. Emma's expression flickered. Surprise, then defensiveness, then something that looked almost like fear. Of course she would. I'm her daughter. So am I. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant. I picked up a small plate, selected a piece of cake with careful deliberation. Each movement was mine, chosen, unhurried. Excuse me, I see someone I need to say hello to. I walked away before she could respond. My heart steady, my hands calm. No anger, no hurt. Just the simple truth that I didn't owe her my energy anymore. That I could walk away mid-conversation and the world would keep turning. That her discomfort was not my responsibility to fix. Behind me, I felt her watching, but I didn't turn around. The turning point came a year after I'd moved out. A year of silence, of distance, of building my own life in the space where their expectations used to be. Emma called, not texted, called on a Tuesday evening. I was reading, curled up in my chair by the window, when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. Her name on the screen stirred something in my chest, some old instinct toward caution. But something in the timing felt off. Too late for casual conversation, too specific for coincidence. Linda? Her voice was small, younger than I'd heard it in years, stripped of its usual confidence. What's wrong? She paused, and I heard her breath catch. Can I come over? I looked around my apartment, my space, my sanctuary, the place I'd built specifically to keep this kind of need at bay. Letting her in felt like inviting in everything I'd left behind, like opening a door I'd carefully locked. But I heard something in her voice that wasn't manipulation or entitlement. It was something closer to fear, to genuine, confused pain. "Okay," I said. "When? Now? If you're free. I'll send you the address." 20 minutes later, she sat on my small couch, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. One of my mugs, cream ceramic with the gold rim. She held it carefully, like it might break, her fingers pressed against the warm sides as if trying to absorb the heat through her skin. "Nice place," she said quietly, looking around. Her eyes took in the books on the shelves, the plants by the window, the artwork I'd chosen myself. All of it mine, all of it deliberate. "Thank you. It's small, but it feels like you." She said it like she was discovering something, like this was the first time she'd thought about what I might be like as a person separate from my function in her life. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I waited. I'd learned that waiting was often the right choice. That silence created space for truth. She stared into her tea, watching the steam rise. Marcus and I broke up. Marcus, the boyfriend she'd been with for 3 years, the one she'd thought would propose, the one she'd missed my birthday dinner for, rescheduled plans for, chosen over family events, the one who'd been her whole world in the way Emma made people her whole world, completely consuming everything, leaving no room for herself. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. Not sorry that they'd broken up, necessarily, but sorry that she was hurting. He said I was too dependent, that I expected everyone to take care of me. Her voice cracked, genuine tears now, not the performative kind she used to get her way. He said I didn't know how to be alone, that I didn't know how to be a person without someone else there to define you, I finished quietly. She looked up at me, tears on her cheeks, and nodded. "How did you know?" "Because I used to be the person you expected to take care of you." The words landed between us, honest and sharp. She flinched but didn't deny it. Couldn't deny it, because we both knew it was true. I sat in my chair across from her, watching her cry into my mug. The irony wasn't lost on me. Emma, who'd taken my things without asking, now literally holding something I'd bought for myself while breaking down about independence. But I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel satisfied by her pain. I just felt sad. Sad that it had taken this long. Sad that she'd had to lose something to learn what I'd learned alone. "Can I stay here tonight?" she asked, her voice small. "I don't want to go back to Mum's. I don't want to hear her tell me it's fine, that he wasn't good enough anyway, that I'll find someone better." The old me would have said yes immediately, would have given up my bed, would have stayed up talking and comforting and absorbing her pain like I was supposed to. The new me considered it carefully, weighing what I could give without giving away pieces of myself I couldn't spare. "You can stay," I said. "But Emma," she looked up, tears on her cheeks, mascara smudged under her eyes. "Tomorrow, you go home, and you figure out what you need to figure out on your own." She nodded slowly, understanding or at least accepting the boundary. "Like you did. Like I did." She left the next morning early, while I was still in bed. I heard her moving quietly through the apartment, heard the water run in the kitchen. When I got up, I found the mug washed and drying by the sink. A small gesture, but more consideration than she'd shown in years. There was a note on the counter in her handwriting, careful and deliberate. "Thank you." Just that. No excuses, no explanations, just acknowledgement. I didn't hear from her for a while after that. Weeks turned into months. The seasons changed, fall into winter, winter into spring. Mum called us occasionally, her tone softer now, less accusatory. She asked how I was, what I was doing, if I needed anything. The conversations were stilted, unfamiliar, like we were learning a new language together. the language of relating to each other as separate people rather than as roles in a fixed dynamic. Emma moved out, Mom said one afternoon, her voice careful. Got her own place downtown. That's good. She's struggling a bit, learning to manage things, but she's trying. There was something in Mom's tone, respect, maybe, or recognition. Something I'd never heard before when she talked about Emma. I heard what Mum wasn't saying. Emma was becoming what I'd already become. Emma was learning what I'd already learned. And Mum was watching it happen again, seeing her daughters leave, not because they hated her, but because they'd needed to find themselves outside her shadow. Because she'd cast that shadow without realizing it, had created a hierarchy without meaning to, had loved imperfectly in a way that had damaged us both. She'll figure it out, I said. You did, a pause. I wish I'd understood earlier what you were trying to tell us by leaving. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was close, closer than I'd expected, maybe closer than she knew how to get. I couldn't have explained it then, I said honestly. I just knew I had to go. I know that now. Her voice was soft. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment and cried. Not from sadness, exactly. From release. From the strange grief of getting something you'd needed for so long that you'd stopped believing you would ever receive it. 2 years after I moved out, I ran into Emma at a coffee shop. Pure coincidence. I was meeting a friend, she was there alone. She was sitting by the window, reading a book, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, no perfect hair, no expensive accessories. She looked normal, tired maybe, but present, real in a way she hadn't been before. Linda, she said, looking up. Her face showed genuine surprise, genuine pleasure. Hi. Hi. Do you want to sit? I mean, if time? I hesitated, then pulled out the chair across from her. We ordered coffee. She got her own, didn't ask to share mine, didn't assume we'd split something, and sat in comfortable silence for a moment. I've been thinking about that night, she said finally, when I came to your apartment. What about it? You didn't have to let me stay, after everything. You needed help. I always needed help. She set down her cup, met my eyes directly. I just never realized how much I took from you while I was taking it. How much I expected without ever giving back. I looked at her, my sister who'd been the favourite not because Mum loved her more, but because she'd never questioned her right to be loved first. Who'd taken my things because she'd never learned that my needs mattered as much as hers. Who'd lived her whole life in the centre of a circle that pushed me to the edges. You were just doing what you were taught, I said quietly. We both were. Still, she met my eyes. I'm sorry, for the mug, for all of it. The mug. That small, cream-coloured symbol of everything that had been wrong. I'd almost forgotten about it. The specific mug, the specific morning. In my new life, I had 4 mugs, then 5, and none of them carried the weight of that old loss. They were just mugs, beautiful and mine, part of a life I'd built on purpose. I forgive you, I said, and realised I meant it. Not because she deserved it, not because what she'd done was okay, but because holding on to it would mean letting it take up space in my life, in my chest, in the home I'd built inside myself. We started meeting occasionally after that. Coffee every few weeks, lunch when our schedules aligned. Not the forced closeness of siblings who shared a house, but the chosen connection of 2 people learning to see each other clearly for the first time. She told me about her job, her apartment, her therapy sessions. She'd started therapy after the breakup, was learning about codependency and boundaries and self-worth. I told her about my work, my routines, the small joys I'd built into my life. We didn't talk much about the past. There was no need. The past had already taught us what we needed to learn. We were both too busy building presents that felt sustainable. One afternoon, 6 months into our careful rebuilding, she showed up at my apartment with a gift bag. This was new. Emma giving instead of taking, Emma thinking about someone else's needs or wants. "What's this?" I asked. "Just open it." Inside was a mug, cream-coloured ceramic with a thin gold rim, identical to the ones I'd bought myself when I moved out, identical to the one that had started everything and nothing, that had been both crucial and meaningless. "They still sell them," she said, "at that home store on 5th. I thought maybe you'd want another one for the set." I pulled it out, turning it in my hands. The ceramic was smooth, the gold rim catching the afternoon light. It was perfect, and it was given freely, with no expectation attached, with no assumption that giving me one thing meant she could take 10 things back. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you for showing me how to leave." Her eyes were clear, steady. No tears, no performance, just honest recognition. "I don't think I would have figured it out otherwise. I don't think I would have known it was possible to just choose yourself." I put the mug in my cabinet with the others, 5 now instead of 4. They sat in a neat row, matching and whole. Each one was mine, bought by me or given by someone who'd learned to respect what was mine. They were ceramic and gold, simple and beautiful, and they held coffee the way they were meant to. Mum came to visit eventually. She called Claude first, asked if it was okay, waited for my answer before showing up. Small changes, but significant ones. Evidence that she'd learned something, that we'd all learned something from the breaking and rebuilding. She stood in my apartment doorway, looking around at my life. The books on the shelf organised by author, the plants by the window thriving in the eastern light, the coffee mugs visible through the kitchen doorway in their careful row. "It's lovely," she said softly. "You've built something really lovely here." "Thank you." "I didn't understand why you left. For a long time I thought you were just being difficult, ungrateful." She moved into the room slowly, like she was entering a space she needed permission to occupy. "I thought you were punishing us." I waited, letting her find the words. I'd learned that truth needed space, needed silence to grow into. "But Emma leaving helped me see it. You weren't abandoning us. You were finding yourself." She sat on the couch, her hands in her lap, fingers twisting together. "I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to disappear to do that." It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't undo the years of being second, of being overlooked, of shrinking myself down to fit into the spaces they'd left me. But it was honest, and it was hers, and it was offered without expectation of immediate forgiveness or absolution. "I'm okay now," I said. "We're all okay now." And it was true. Not because everything was fixed or because they'd suddenly become different people, but because I'd drawn the lines I needed to draw, and they'd learned slowly, imperfectly, to respect them. Because I'd stopped waiting for them to see me and started seeing myself instead. Years passed. I stayed in my apartment, then moved to a bigger one when my career advanced. I fell in love, fell out of love, fell in love again. I travelled, read books, made friends who knew me as Linda, whole, complete, not someone's sister or daughter first. Emma built her own life too. She changed careers, went back to school, learned to cook. She dated carefully, walked away when things felt wrong. She called me sometimes just to talk, not to ask for anything. Mum aged gracefully, learned to check in without hovering, to offer help without assuming it was needed. Family dinners became occasional and voluntary, comfortable instead of obligatory. The mug, the original one, the one Emma had taken in that other timeline, never actually existed in this version of events. I'd left before buying it, before that particular small heartbreak. But the set I'd bought instead sat in my cabinet, used and loved, each one a reminder of the choice I'd made. The choice to leave. The choice to matter. The choice to build a life where my things were my own, and my space was sacred. And when Emma or Mum or anyone asked why I'd left that day 3 years ago, I told them the simple truth. I needed to. Not because they had done one terrible thing, but because of 1,000 tiny erasures that had taught me I was optional. Because staying would have meant continuing to shrink until there was nothing left to save. I'd left, and in leaving, I'd found myself. They'd lost me, and in losing me, they'd learned what they'd had. That was its own kind of justice, quiet, inevitable, and strangely merciful. On the anniversary of the day I moved out, I woke up early in my own bed, in my own home, surrounded by my own things. I made coffee in one of my mugs, sat by the window, and watched the sunrise paint my walls gold. Emma texted, "Happy moving day, proud of you." Mum called later. "Just wanted to say I'm glad you're happy." I responded to both with gratitude, with love, but also with the quiet assurance that I would still be fine if they hadn't reached out. That my happiness didn't depend on their acknowledgement anymore. That was the real freedom. Not the leaving itself, but the becoming that followed it. I died in that bed 3 years ago under the weight of being invisible. I'd woken up with a second chance and used it to build something no one could take without asking. Something that was completely, undeniably mine. The mug in my hands was warm. The coffee inside it was exactly how I liked it. The light through the window was soft and golden. The kind of light that makes everything look like it's worth keeping. The apartment around me hummed with the quiet peace of a life lived deliberately, chosen with both hands. I sipped my coffee slowly, tasting every bit of it. The bitterness, the sweetness, the warmth spreading through my chest. This was my life now. Small victories, small joys accumulated into something that felt like home. And when I set the mug down, it would still be there waiting for me. Right where I left it, exactly where it belonged.